What's up everyone, Vu of Vu Films, and I am back with another idiotic video for you to watch. Today, I have the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 and the 33mm f1.4 review from my perspective. I originally wanted to do just the 23 separately and the 33 separately, but I'm a lazy piece of YouTube douchebag trash, so I'm gonna just combine the two. So I'm sorry if you have to like skip by 23 and 33 or 33 and 23 because you don't care for both of them, you just care for one of them. But anyway, sorry to inconvenience you. So I'm currently filming with the 23 f1.4 and I have the 33mm f1.4 here. And just in case you think I am lying, here's the two boxes. If that matters. I'm gonna be very straightforward and clear with you. I am not the most technical reviewer on the planet. I'm not going to be taking pictures of bricks and some like diagrams and you know, black and white diagram pictures and stuff to show sharpness. I'm very much a user-based reviewer. I want to use the lenses on real-world situations, look at the actual images that I would be capturing as a professional or as, you know, just a hobbyist or whatever, and see if I'm satisfied with the image, and I make my decision based on that. With that being said, if you want to know if the Viltrox 23 and 33 are worth the buy, 100% yes. If you want a 23mm f1.4, you cannot go wrong with the Viltrox 23mm f1.4. If you want a 33 or 35mm f1.4, you cannot go wrong with the Viltrox. With that being said, there are other options out there, and two of them are the f2 lenses from Fuji, which is the 23mm f2 and the 35mm f2. And if I were to say which one you should pick between the Fuji ones versus the Viltrox ones, if it's a 23mm, I would go with the Viltrox 100%, hands down, and I'll show you in a bit. And with regards to the 33 and the 35mm, it is up to two items that are both based on the versatility of the lenses. First off, if you want the faster aperture, if you know you're gonna be shooting in low light situations and you may need f1.4, I would 100% go to the Viltrox lens. There, the Viltrox wins that battle, obviously. Where the Fuji is more versatile is that it is better at close focusing. So if you want to shoot more like close-up or borderline macro type images, you would want to go for the Fujifilm 35mm f2 lens. So I'm just gonna do some quick, very unofficial, very unscientific measurements here. So when it comes to close focusing, the 23mm Viltrox lens, the closest I got was around 270mm. And to all of my fellow American douchebags that cannot follow the metric rules of measurements, it's around 10.5 inches. And the 23mm Fuji f2 lens is only 110mm, and that's roughly like 4.3 inches, which is 4 inches more than what I am packing. But that is neither here nor there. The 33mm Viltrox close focusing is around 355 millimeters. Let me just double check that. Yes, and that is roughly what I got here is 14 inches. And the Fuji 35mm f2 close focusing was 245 millimeters, which is about 9.7 inches, which is about 9.5 inches more than what I'm packing. So, again, neither here nor there, but just throwing it out there, just in case you were wondering. So that is that for close focusing, okay? What about autofocus noise? I'm gonna be honest with you, you really have to literally put the lens right up against your ear to hear some tick, 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 tick of the autofocusing noise on the Viltrox and the Fuji lenses, and that is perfectly fine with me. I don't think there's any issue with it. It's pretty much silent when you're holding the camera, like right here. I can't hear it at all. Other than that, let's go into more of the image test. All right, I'm going to go in depth with the image tests. So what I'm gonna go through is autofocus, autofocus tracking, object, and face detect, which is what this camera is actually doing right now. I'm just leaving it on face and eye detect autofocus on the 23mm f1.4 Viltrox lens. I'm gonna do face tracking and object tracking, compare it against the Viltrox. I will also do chromatic aberration, look at that. I might even go through some flare resistance, see how reacts to actual like flares from the sun, sunset shots and stuff like that. And obviously I'm going to show some samples of the videos and photos I was able to get past week, really just diving into using these lenses in pretty much very challenging situations, in my opinion, to what I'm in comparison to what I do professionally. So let's go ahead and dive into the test, shall we? All right, so here we have the Viltrox 33mm f1.4 at f1.4. Chromatic aberration, as you can see on the left, the discoloration and the bokeh. And this is the Viltrox at f2. Still some CA, but not as bad. And here is the Fujifilm at f2. Much better at chromatic aberration, but again, you're gonna have to really try hard to get chromatic aberration in the lens. This is the 23mm f1.4. As you can see, there's some CA there in the bokeh. This is the Viltrox lens as well. And there's the Viltrox at f2. Nice, clean, smooth bokeh in my opinion. And here is the Fujifilm at f2. And I'm going to show you closely why I don't really like the Fujifilm f2 bokeh in a moment. Here is zoomed in photos comparing the three lenses. The two lenses at different apertures, as you can see at the labels at the bottom. Here is the 23mm Viltrox, left and middle, Fuji to the right. And here is a zoomed in Fujifilm 23 f2 onion ring bokeh I do not like. Now we're on to tracking. Again, this is the Fuji 33 f1.4 at f1.4, tracks very well. This is the Viltrox at f2, tracking very well. Just follow the labels below for the lens information. Overall, I think all four of the lenses, the Viltrox and the Fujifilm, track subjects very well. As long as you touch the screen, you put the area focus, whatever is in that box that you touch on the screen, it's going to focus and track very well, as you can see here. I don't see too much breathing. I don't see any issues with that. I think the transition is very smooth during the focus, so this is really good in my opinion. Here is the face tracking test. As you can see, my ugly trash face walking back and forth here. This is the Viltrox 33 f1.4 at f1.4. And here is the Viltrox 33 at f2. Again, I'm just doing f1.4 wide open and f2 to compare against the Fujifilm f2 wide open. I think it performed decent. Is it as good as something like Sony? No, but again, with anything with cameras, whether it be using a gimbal or autofocus, it's not going to do all the work for you. Obviously, while you're filming behind the camera, autofocusing is very active. You have to keep an eye on it. If something's going on, you touch the screen, you make adjustments, and it'll work perfectly fine for you in actual real-time professional filming situations, which I'll have example of in a bit. Overall, I think the face detection is adequate on a Fujifilm f2 lens, as well as the Viltrox 23 and 33. It's very usable. It is not Sony good, but it's usable, and I find no issues with it. I will say that if you really want better autofocus, just turn off face detect and just touch the screen, and wherever part of the screen that you touched, it will focus very well. I think sometimes just regular object tracking is better than Sony even. It's very smooth, so if you feel unconfident about face detect, always try the touch tracking. Alright, so that's like the more quote unquote technical type of just test to see how the lenses performed. As you can see, they all performed very well. In my opinion, I think if you know, a lot of people were saying at f1.4 there's some chromatic aberration issues with a 33mm. Yes, the 33mm f1.4 does have some chromatic aberration. I think most 35mm lenses at f1.4, f1.2 type lenses have some chromatic aberration at the edges of the image. Now, I also want to point out that you really have to try to get chromatic aberration out of these lenses. Like, you have to take photos or take video against higher contrast areas like dark green and clear bright white afternoon skies, or in my case I did some other tests against, you know, black. If you do like black and white type stuff, you will see the chromatic aberration there. But again, if you are watching your highlights, as you should be as a professional videographer, photographer, then you will not really see much chromatic aberration at all at f1.4. And if when you stop down, the chromatic aberration is not bad at all. There's actually some movies I've watched where I've seen chromatic aberration used on purpose. One that comes to mind is Fury. It's the war movie. There were a lot of scenes where they purposely used the lens to show the chromatic aberration for some reason. It was artistic choice, but it's not always the bad thing. And again, you really have to try to find the chromatic aberration, or just taking photos and videos in situations that are not ideal for a good looking image. Tracking, as you saw with Fujifilm, face and eye detect is not as good as Sony. Okay, I'm a Sony user. As you see, I was using the Sony camera as the product test. It is not going to be as good as Sony, but one thing I think it is better than Sony is when you touch the screen and you just want it to track whatever that's in that area of the screen that you touched, it tracks it very well. So if you're not confident with the face detect, as I am, I'm not super confident with the Fujifilm face and eye detect for video or photo, but I will use it for photo when I have to, obviously. But I am very confident with the touch tracking. Fuji is very good with that, and that would be perfectly fine to use in run and gun situations, weddings. If you need to track people walking down the aisle, I really recommend just touching the screen where you want focus to be, and just make sure the object or the person that you want being focused stays within that box, and it will focus perfectly fine. If you're looking for a 23mm lens at f1.4, or just f2, if you really want a good autofocusing Fujifilm lens, I do not recommend getting the 23mm f1.4 Fujifilm lens. I did not talk about the 23 or the 35 f1.4 Fujifilm lenses because I really don't like them. I had them for about 2 weeks. They're very noisy at autofocus. I miss focus a lot with them. They hunt quite a bit. It's an old focusing motor in those lenses. And a lot of times, like, I wasn't really too impressed with the image that I got from it, even when it was in focus. So that's why I didn't really recommend those. If you're looking for a 23mm f1.4 lens for the Fujifilm system right now, I highly recommend the Viltrox 23 that I'm using right now over the Fujifilm f2 even, simply because, one, it is more versatile at f1.4 for like low light situations, or if you just want like that added depth of field, with the added shallow depth of field. But in the f2, as you saw in that one picture I posted up, I do not like the bokeh in the 23mm f2. Something about it is a little bit busy, or is just kind of, when I first looked at the 23mm f2 lens image, I was not really sure. I couldn't put a finger on it why I didn't like the image, and it just turns out that when I zoomed in to the bokeh, I noticed a lot of onion ring action, and I think it just caused the image to not look as good. And that's just my opinion. You could take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I am just a YouTube douchebag trying to make a review here and helping you out. So right now, 23mm f1.4. So right now, 23mm lens for Fujifilm, I think the best option is the Viltrox. And you know, price and all that stuff comes to mind. If you really need weather sealing, go for the Fujifilm lens. But I think if that's not a huge concern for you, the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 is highly recommended. The 33 is different. So the 33mm f1.4, like I said earlier, I think autofocus performance and overall image quality is great with both the Viltrox and the Fujifilm f2. But if you want the extra f1.4, the extra added light for low light situations and the extra shallow depth of field, go for the Viltrox 33mm f1.4. I think you'd be very happy. If you want more close focusing, I would go for the f2 35mm f2 lens from Fujifilm. Again, all these lenses, I think they autofocus equally well. Especially when I was like using it, filming my daughter and taking pictures of my daughter, I think they perform similarly. Like if I were to switch them back and forth, I couldn't tell which was which in terms of usability, in terms of autofocus, in terms of just being able to get the shots that I was trying to get. They functioned as well as I think they should for a Fujifilm lens. Again, if you were to ask me, like, if you wanted to switch from Sony to Fuji, I think you do fine. I think you'd be very satisfied with how the Fujifilm X-T4, which I'm using right now, I forget to mention that this is the Fujifilm X-T4 I'm filming with, that it's just overall really good. You know, I think right now both the Viltrox 23 and the 33, at its price and its performance, it can't be beat. You know, $300 or so for two very fantastic performing lenses for the Fuji X-mount system on the X-T4 that I'm using right now. You can't go wrong. I think, they also are constantly doing firmware updates. I updated both of these lenses with the most updated firmware before I started testing them. So I think it's not bad. Again, I hope this video helped you make a decision on, whether or not you want to purchase these Viltrox lenses or not. I would say that if you already own the 33mm, I would say if you already own the 35mm f2, maybe not switch or buy the 33mm f1.4. It may not be necessary for you. If you currently own the 23mm f2 or even the 23mm f1.4 from Fuji, I would highly recommend you give the 23mm f1.4 lens from Viltrox a try. It is, I think, as good as any 23mm, 24mm f1.4 you could get. And this is coming from a Sony guy who has the 33mm f1.8 lens for the full frame A7 III and the 24mm f1.4 G Master full frame lens for the A7 III, which pretty much translate to the same focal length as these on an APS-C system. And those lenses are like $750 for the 35 and $1,200 or so for the 24mm GMs. So for these Fujifilm lenses from Viltrox, $300 is absolute steal. Highly recommended for photo and video, as I hope you could tell from the images and the footages that I have shown while I'm talking. And yeah, I hope that covered a good amount of what you guys wanted to see. I hope it helps you make a decision on your own. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to show you the test that I was able to produce, my opinion on the matter, and I hope it helped. If you like this video, obviously give it a good old like, and if you enjoyed what I had offered here and thought it was helpful and you would like to see more videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It would be very much appreciated and it would help out my videographer douchebag that have a lot less gigs this year because of what virus we're talking about. And till next time, guys, lighten up.